we're here to discuss a topic about transforming the future of cities like Tulsa, the rise of remote work, its impact on our economy, talent pool, and our community. So thank you so much for that warm introduction. A little bit about myself. For 6 years, had the privilege of leading Tulsa's Young Professionals, which I like to say was the grandfather to Tulsa Remote, right? We walked so you could run.
Yep.
And our organization was created in response to what we called the brain drain. So in the 2010s or the 2000s of Tulsa, we saw about 10% of our talented workforce like in droves leaving Tulsa. So as a response, Mike, Neal, and the great people of the Tulsa Regional Chamber decided to create an organization geared towards trying to make Tulsa the best city it could be for young people, to try to attract or retain young talent here. So this conversation is really prevalent to the work I did and continue to do to improve our community for young people and for all people. So as we fast forward today, we're seeing a new wave of talented individuals moving through the programs like Tulsa Remote. And it is really transforming Tulsa. Through our program, 2,000 remote professionals have moved here since 2018. I think it's higher now. I think the numbers are, as of today's New York Times report, over 3,000.
Yep.
And more importantly, the numbers we used to track when I was working at Type Rose was the median income and the number of talented, educated workforce has also increased. So every $1 spent on Tulsa Remote, $13 is generated in economic impact. So it's an impressive return that speaks to the program's success and in the broader economic impact of remote work widely. So I'm really honored to be among friends today talking about this. Of course, Justin Harlan, who's the managing director of Tulsa Remote, he's been at the forefront in bringing talented professionals to Tulsa far beyond Tulsa Remote with Teach for America, where we first met almost, I think, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
I think right whenever
Hard
you got
to.
Yeah. We were both at the helm of organizations doing good work. And my former boss, Mike Neal, who I'm going to give plenty of a hard time to today, has been the city's arguably biggest cheerleader and has played a pivotal role in positioning Tulsa as a desirable city to live and work. He's been at the helm of our chamber for, he just told me, 19 years this year. And he has really been pivotal in ushering in this generation of like what I would call Tulsa's Renaissance. Garry Clark, welcome to Tulsa. He's our newest member of the stage.
Hey.
He just joined. Yeah, that's worthy of a celebration.
Thank
He
you.
is the brand spanking new. He's been here 2 months. CEO of PartnerTulsa, who is our economic development organization at the city, who joined the organization in August from Washington, but he also has come from other places, Nebraska, elsewhere. He brings his unique perspective on leading economic development organizations nationwide, shaping Tulsa's future growth. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you. This is fun.
So fun.
Looking forward to it.
Excited. Okay, so let's dig into it. Garry, I want to start with you. So when we think about economic development in the traditional sense, we think about these incentive packages, luring headquarters. I had a light bulb moment today where I was like, what we're doing here is instead of giving incentives to companies, we're giving incentives to workers. So I want to talk about, you've had the opportunity to work in several markets and have seen how cities traditionally approach this economic development work. With the rise of remote work, we're seeing a shift in what workforce attraction looks like and how cities are thinking about economic growth. From your perspective, how has remote work changed the traditional mindset about economic development? And what are some of the biggest shifts you've observed in how cities like Tulsa are approaching workforce attraction and retention?
Well, first of all, thank you, and thank you, Tulsa, and Mike, thank you for being a part of this. And folks, I think Tulsa's doing it right, first and foremost. I think this is, you can clap to that. I think first and foremost, nationally, this is a paradigm shift where you're seeing the organizations, businesses looking for ways to consolidate cost, but also to benefit and attract people. And what you're seeing is a move that is not unlike the NIL deals for colleges to put the money in the pockets of the people who are making the impact. And so here in Tulsa, you have the ability to draw that directly to the people who are going to impact community. And I would say that this is truly a benefit. Economically, it provides an incentive that is a direct base cost pay. And so you also see a net new dollar here in Tulsa because you're talking about new people coming to the community as opposed to retention, which is important, but this is a brand new model. So we'll get into other pieces to that. So across the country, people are still trying to solve this particular need because it can be bogged down in bureaucracy. It could be bogged down into the pockets of political pandering and spaces. But here in Tulsa, you've figured it out. Last piece to say that this is tied to connection points in other states where they've had issues with brain drain. They've had issues across the board with the capacity to draw in talented student loads who leave the city or the state for other opportunities. Being able to embark on not only domestic folks, but international folks wanting to come to Tulsa is really the difference maker. So this is a paradigm shift economically. It is now pushing other economic organizations to find ways to create benefits for this.
Yeah, I think it's really disrupted the way we think about workforce attraction and retention, for sure. We'll talk more about that. Justin, you know, I was not always the biggest supporter of Tulsa Remote. Not supporter, I would say I was skeptic. And Mike Neal was quoted in the New York Times today as also being a fellow skeptic. You know, what was the quote?
Yeah, I was quoted in today's New York Times as saying, when my friend Ken Lavett approached me a number of years ago about the start of this program, I said, I don't think it's going to work.
You said not.
No, hold on. And I said, I'm not really sure how good an idea that is. As a matter of fact, I don't think it's got a snowball's chance in hell of working in Tulsa. And I told the New York Times reporter, boy, was I wrong. They didn't bother to print that in the paper today.
Yeah. That story is a good one. You should read it today. It's all about the brain drain. But Justin, as you know, I worked for almost a decade in this space of trying to attract and retain people to Tulsa. It's tough work. And having worked at the chamber during what I would say arguably one of the most critical periods of that growth and development, it's amazing to see how in 10 years we could move the needle an inch, and you've been able to move it a mile in such a small amount of time. And we tried everything. I mean, I did a lot of ridiculous things. You can Google them, driving a trailer truck of Trader Joe's goods here to try to move to open Trader Joe's here. We did a lot of crazy stuff, but there's no question. It did work. We did get Trader Joe's here, but there is no question that Tulsa Remote has made the largest single impact on workforce development in our community compared to any other strategy I've seen. So can you share how Tulsa Remote has contributed to that economic transformation and what lessons other cities can learn from this? It's impressive.
Well, first and foremost, I think I welcome skeptics, because if I'm honest, there's a lot of times in the work that I've been doing that I'm my own skeptic as well, of like, is this right? Is this the right move? Are we doing the right things? And so I welcome anybody who wants to challenge and push back, because I think it actually makes us better as an organization. So I've loved the way you've done that over the last couple of years, especially. I also appreciate that you point out that we are one of many, because I think Tulsa Remote in many ways was kind of right place, right time. And I don't believe that if Tulsa Remote launched 20 years ago, that many of you who have moved through the program would have made the decision to move. That's a Tulsa that is very different. When I was in college, there was no reason to come downtown. Didn't have the gathering place, didn't have the BOK Center, didn't have the baseball park, which, so much of that's due to your leadership, Mike. But to me, there is work that has been done years before Tulsa Remote was even a thought that needs to be acknowledged too, because it's prepared the city to be an attractive place that people want to come to. And, for me, it's important to point that out, because while what we've done is impressive and certainly has made folks wonder if this is an economic model of the future, there's also so many folks like you all that have come before us that have kind of paved the way. So I want to note that. What has the success of the program been? So we know that in 2023, there was about $500 million in direct labor income that was brought into the city through the program. We know that for every dollar that's been spent on the incentive, there's been about a $13 return on investment to the city. And what I think matters most, especially to local folks, is that we also know, due to large amounts of people coming into a city and having money to spend at bars and restaurants and buy tickets to concerts and go to the barista, there's also over 1,300 jobs at a local level that have been created, primarily in retail and hospitality, due to folks just showing up and wanting to spend more. And we also know that Tulsa is sticky. Like, we were placing a bet on the fact that if we could get people to give Tulsa a chance, the magic of this place is going to shine. And that has been true. We've seen about 90% of people stay beyond the year. About 75% of anyone who's moved through the program is still here today. And it's special to be a part of something that Tulsa Remote is playing a role in, but really feels like a much bigger picture that we're on the precipice of really something special as a city.
Yeah, we always used to say at the chamber, if we could get boots on the ground, Tulsa sold itself.
Yes.
And it was from an economic development standpoint, it was from a young professional standpoint. We just knew the city had that special sauce that was attractive on so many levels. So we're lucky to have Tulsa Remote bringing so many boots on the ground because it really does sell itself. So Mike, kind of pivoting to kind of the chamber's perspective on things, I'd love to know, when we think about, I think about the growth of Tulsa, I think for the first time, the MSA topped over 1 million. So as we see programs like this, growing the number of people, residents here, thousands of residents impacting our community's infrastructure and services, how has this tangibly changed Tulsa? And what challenges have arisen as Tulsa adapts to this growing remote workforces? Like, how are we responding to some of those challenges?
I'd say number one, Shagah, I want to say hats off to you from your leadership at Type Rose many years ago. And you really helped Type Rose catapult this community and really engage young professionals. My family and I came here 19 years ago. At the time, the BOK Center was literally a hole in the ground. A hole in the ground. And our organization at the Chamber had run a major bond issue in collaboration with the city of Tulsa and Tulsa County called Vision 2025. And one of the things it did was to build that arena. And it also invested in recreation centers and in educational facilities all across Tulsa County and all the suburbs across our region. And it really provided a number of quality of life enhancements that I think Justin has talked about.
Right.
And we just yesterday had 3 economic development site visits on the same day. That's unheard of. Yeah. But I mean, I think the thing that I really compliment Justin and GKFF and the whole Tulsa Remote program is really for enhancing Tulsa's image. And the fact that you brought 3,300, not just 3,300 individuals, but 3,300 people, many of whom are married, many of whom have gotten married since they came here, many of whom brought kids with them, or have had children since they came here. That's a lot of new people, really. And I think for the first time, we had a group of 125 people from our city and region in Detroit last week for an inter-city visit. One of the things we learned in Detroit, that they had not had a positive increase in their net migration since 1958. Wow. 1958. All that time up until about a year ago, they've lost population. And so for the first time, just a year or two ago, they've gained population. That certainly happened. Shagah referenced that, but that being able to top 1 million people in our MSA for the first time is huge, because so often when you're trying to recruit certain companies, be they retail operations or certain larger companies, many times companies and site selection consultants only want to look at MSAs of 1 million people or more. And the fact that we were at 800,000 or 900 or 700,000, we weren't making the mark. And so to be over 1 million people has really helped us significantly. And I think, Shagah, the great work and all the positive publicity that's come out of Tulsa Remote and other programs relating to our enhanced quality of life, just like the big damn party that happened Labor Day weekend, when we celebrated the opening, we finally put water in the river. At the Chamber, we've been talking about putting water in the river, at least for the 19 years I've been here, probably for 100 years. Yeah. We've talked about putting water in the river, and thank God, since Labor Day, we got water in the river. And you can do all kinds of things that I'm not going to try to do.
I was going to ask you if you've done that yet.
No.
Okay.
I got an inch knee.
I'd love to see Mike on a kayak out there on those rapids for sure. I think you bring up a really interesting point. We've tons of people coming in. I think this topic was really pressing. I loved Greg Lindsay's presentation earlier today. I didn't get a chance to connect with him, but thinking about like the physical place that we're building and how that response to remote workers. But I am also captivated, and this came up in the article today in the New York Times, about this concept of gentrification, right? Yep. And when we think about the challenges facing Tulsa, just as we were prepping for the session just a few minutes ago, Mike brought up the need for 13,000 housing units, So how do we, one of the appealing parts of Tulsa is its affordability. So how do we retain some of the things that make us uniquely special while addressing some of these broader needs around housing and gentrification and ensuring that we're scaling in a way that protects some of that specialness. I open that to up to anyone. Justin, maybe?
Sure. I mean, first and foremost, it's something we care a lot about. I mean, one of our biggest selling points, I think, as a city is the cost. We don't want to look back in 10 years and say we could have done something different and now we've lost one of our biggest value adds. On our side, we're obviously not in the business of building buildings. We do believe that this is an important supply and demand equation. I know you all can speak more to kind of what's coming down the pike, but as we increase demand at Tulsa Remote, we've got to help supply stay up as well. That's what's going to keep it all at that cost of living low. For us, we know we have control over a couple things. So one is how we support our members. Every realtor or lender that we connect a member to directly has been through our equitable housing program, which is a five-course program that helps people to kind of identify their own role in creating equitable systems in Tulsa. How do I show up and the bias that I bring to the job? Kind of what is Tulsa's history around housing? So we know that everyone we're connecting folks with at least has had some commitment to better understanding themselves in the midst of this large systemic issue. We also know that the resources we provide, so are you considering buying a home? Here's some things you might consider as you decide where to do that, and kind of equip folks with resources to then make values-based decisions that also helps Tulsa be as strong as possible in the long term. And really, I think Tulsa Remote is easy to point at as it relates to housing because we're often in the front page news, and it's obviously a huge program that's relocating folks, but I think we also have to be comfortable with the fact that Tulsa is just becoming better. It's becoming a place that people want to be. And the Californian that's living next door to you may not have come here through Tulsa Remote. They may just have seen Tulsa and want to be a part of this magic that's happening. And so there's also, I think, some of that where we know that about 500 Tulsa Remoters have bought a home since 2019. And there's been about 20,000 homes purchased in the city since 2019. So have we played a role in some of that? Sure, I think it would be naive to say no, but there's also been many homes purchased, and you kind of weigh the pros and cons of talent attraction versus negative net migration. And to me, I think if we can do this responsibly while increasing housing supply, that's really the secret recipe to make this only go in a positive direction.
Mm-hmm. So I'll highlight just from the PartnerTulsa perspective. In the last 3 years of our target goals, we've helped support in developing about 1,500 units of housing. And in that time, about 500 of those units have been what we would call workforce housing or affordable housing. In that space, I think the desire is to make sure that we're not leaving anyone out. And so in that space, we realized that remote work here and the connection to the work that the Chamber of Commerce is doing, this is about diversification of people and opportunities. And so connecting the dot on the housing component means that we're looking at multiple ways to enact diversifications, making sure that the gentrification piece is lessened. That means targeting low-income housing tax credit projects, targeting new market tax credit projects, targeting opportunities that we can change and navigate the accessibility. So you can do a comparison as far as the percentages of what that the market rate housing is based on multifamily versus any other mixed-use development projects. So we're going to continue to move down that path of balance. And I always like to say yes and. So.
Yeah, it's no doubt that our community is hyper-focused on this issue. So it's exciting to see the collaboration across organizations that have made this possible. Mike, I think you are often at the table for a lot of these public-private partnerships. So can you talk, I know that, for example, $1.3 billion has been invested in downtown through these types of partnerships. So can you talk a little bit about the partnerships that have been the most pivotal in that change, especially among the individuals on the stage? Like, what partnerships have been the most impactful to recruiting new talent to Tulsa?
Yeah, I'll use an example that I did yesterday with site selection consultants in town. One of the things that, first of all, to set the stage, Justin and his team do a magnificent job. They recruited you. They recruit talent. To differentiate us in the chamber, we recruit companies. We recruit companies that are small, medium, and large, some very large international companies. But we recruit the companies. And the companies have to have talent. In the 3 different companies that we had in town yesterday, 2 were new. One very large, one newer, smaller, and another an existing company that has grown like gangbusters. Here, we recruited them here from Wisconsin six years ago, and they're growing. So talent, Shagah, is really the number one thing that everybody wants to talk about. But really what we tell companies when we're recruiting them, and what we told these people yesterday, is that we really feel in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Northeast Oklahoma, that we have the best public-private partnership in America, right here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And what I mean by that is that we have a city government. We have a mayor, we have a city council, we have a city government who is committed to growth and development. We have a county commission, county commission that is committed to development. We have a state. We have a governor and a state legislature and really a state department of commerce that we work with on a daily basis. We have a congressional delegation that's extremely engaged and very supportive. Probably one of the things in my mind, Shagah, that distinguishes us from so many others is that we have tribal governments here. And most people and most consultants and companies really don't have much experience. I moved here, as I said, we came here from Nashville, Tennessee. I no more knew the difference in a tribal government than a man in the moon. But they're amazing. And they're huge assets to us. Just in Tulsa alone, we have 3 tribal governments whose borders come together probably a mile or less than a mile from where we sit today. And so those tribal governments are huge players in this public-private partnership. Our governor sometimes doesn't like to acknowledge that, but they're huge players. And so many times when we're trying to land a deal, Shagah referenced incentives, sometimes the incentives are not that much. But sometimes companies want to see the commitment from a local community. It doesn't have to be a ton of money, but they want to see the commitment. They want to make everybody have a little bit of skin in the game. And so I would say so many of these partnerships, Shagah, have been just public-private partnerships to where you've had everybody at the table supporting one another. And whether you're building a new arena, whether you're building a new baseball stadium, whether we're going to build a soccer stadium next, or whether we're trying to attract a new company with a couple hundred jobs or 1,000 jobs, coming together with the public sector and the private sector is essential in making that happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So Garry, you're new to Tulsa. You chose to come here. I'd love to hear a little bit about your experience having done this work in other places. What makes us stand out? What is unique about Tulsa as a leader in this work? And what are the strengths that made you excited to come here? And how can we continue to build on that in your new role?
Thank you. First and foremost, I obviously made a mistake and should have joined the program.
You wouldn't have qualified.
But beyond that, though, I really think what drew me to Tulsa was the energy that Mike is talking about. You can see it. It's palpable. It's across the country. It's international even. There's a draw here. There's action. And then there's history that is coupled with that just drew me in. I wanted to be a part of the growth that's happening. I wanted to be a part of the change agent motive that we have. And as Mike mentioned, these collaborative groups, when you think city, chamber, and other partnership groups, you think of kind of a who's who, top 5. If you like sports, I'm all into sports. I think of us being a USA dream team, and we have that collective fiber here. Beyond that, though, is being honest about our hardships, too, and how to tackle them, our gaps. And for me, it was a draw to see people like Mike, who I knew prior to in this field and economic development work, and I watched what was happening on a national level. We're talking about an organization that is top-notch in the country and globally as far as our Chamber of Commerce. We're talking about an organization that's doing something that has never been done before. This is why you come to Tulsa. And so I'm excited. I just moved around the corner. I walked down. I didn't even know about this building. I walked past it 100 times to go to Fixin's. Don't go to Fixin's unless you want to sleep well at night. I
love Fixin's. I went Southern boy, love
I went to bed at 8:30 last night because I had 3 chicken wings, some beans, and some cornbread. And by the time I woke up, I realized that I just had what they call the itis. So I will tell you, Tulsa has amazing food, amazing people, eclectic energy, and the talent base. And what you're seeing is industry clusters growing. And that's really what's going to happen. When you draw these people in, you're not just coming here to live a lifestyle. You're starting a business. You're connecting to businesses. You're being a part of the entrepreneurial spirit. So Tulsa drew me in because it has entrepreneurial spirit.
Shagah, if I could play off Garry for just a second. Gary and I were both former college athletes. He was a good one. I was a bad one. Didn't have much talent. But one of the things in sports we learn, and if you watch sports, you'll see that momentum. But whether it's football, basketball, baseball, track, golf, tennis, whatever, momentum is everything. And I think one of the things that we're really blessed, he talked about the positivity. One of the things that we're so blessed with today is that for the first time in maybe several decades, we've got amazing momentum. Amazing positivity. I saw that when my family and I lived in Nashville. Amazing that positivity. And so I think that has positioned us right now, that positivity, that momentum to just take off. Yeah. We're taking off, but I think we've just seen the beginning, Shagah, of how we're going to accelerate.
Yeah, I mean, I think 2 decades of hard work is like we've been working the engine. And it's just exciting to be a lifelong Tulsan who is watching kind of where we're going. Yeah. I think if I do talk on panels and talk about Tulsa, the thing that I think is so special is the ability for people to come into our community or be in our community and make an impact and make a difference. And it's interesting, I was at dinner last night and I sat next to the Gen Z panel expert who's going to be speaking tomorrow, Danielle. And she was talking about her difficulty in New York trying to engage with nonprofit boards and being able to contribute and volunteer in a meaningful way with organizations. And I just thought to myself, wow, we do not have that problem here. We have so many avenues and access to opportunity. And so just in thinking about beyond like economic growth, integrating remote workers into the local economy is so crucial. It's how they dig into a community and feel a part of it and want to stay, right? It's a retention strategy. So how has Tulsa Remote really helped professionals feel like that they're a part of the local community? And how does this integration support the city's broader economic goal? Yeah,
well, first it starts like any organization hiring somebody, it starts in your selection process. So, we look for folks that obviously come in with the ability to contribute to the economy, have a job that's going to be additive, but also have thought about ways that they're going to make Tulsa better. They're not coming as cultural consumers, but they're ready to give back to the city that they're relocating to. And that starts in our selection process, like trying to figure out the ways in which we identify those people through marketing and then through the application and interview. But then when somebody arrives, we have folks that are ready to meet with them in their first 90 days here in Tulsa. And we have an amazing team that's led by Dominique Clark and Judy, 4 different member integration specialists, Caitlin and Awone and Tanya and Raquel, that are all basically having portfolios of members that they're caring for in those first 90 days. And our methodology there is that we actually would love to not have to see you like much longer past your year. And we see that actually as a form of success, where if you're still showing up to Tulsa Remote events in order to feed your experience in Tulsa, like 3 years after you've moved here, then you clearly haven't done much to like integrate into other organizations and help yourself kind of live out your own values and passions in other ways. So get out of that Tulsa Remote bubble. And that's really our approach, is like, how do we connect you to people or organizations that align with your values and passions so that you don't need us in order to love Tulsa. And relying on a program, I think, just doesn't do the city justice. And so to me, how do you apply that to organizations or cities? People care about more than just their work. Like, we are full human beings that need to be able to live fully while working remotely. It's all over the walls, right? How do we show up and see somebody for who they are as a full person, acknowledge the things that we know they need, not just in work or in the workplace, but in life, and then come alongside them to make sure that those needs are being met? And I think Tulsa Remote is a great example of prioritizing community, prioritizing networks, prioritizing integration matters. And it makes you a more effective employee because you're showing up in healthier and happier ways. And in that scenario, everybody wins,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Tulsa has a reputation as America's most generous city. So philanthropy, is at the heart of who we are. So if you are new to Tulsa or you're here, I encourage everyone to find a way to give back and make a meaningful impact in our community, because it's what makes us so unique. Our social gatherings are all philanthropic efforts. Our parties are all charity efforts. So it's really important that I think that we recognize that, because I think it is what makes us so uniquely special.
Totally agree.
I think I just want to open it up to some questions. We have a little bit of time for that. If anyone has any thoughts on this topic, we'd love to hear from those in the crowd.
I just wanted to know you all's position on hiring people who didn't come from another state, but are residents of Oklahoma who have moved to Tulsa. So for example, like if they're from Idabel or Ardmore or Ada or somewhere like that, what's you guys' position on people from different cities in Oklahoma moving into Tulsa? Just because I think that it would be a little bit easier to get them to buy into giving back to the town and integrating, because if they're from a rural area, you know, they're just happy to be in a place where the city's popping, but they still get to stay in Oklahoma, but get that different experience. So to sum that all up, like, what's you guys' position on hiring people to move from different cities within Oklahoma?
I'll start it. We don't really care where they come from. I'd just as soon have someone from New York City or Chicago or Los Angeles as I would Ardmore. You know, we try not to make a conscious effort of recruiting companies or people from other communities within the state. They're our friends, our neighbors, our partners. So we don't target those people. But I'd say we welcome a net in-migration of talent, no matter where they come from. I would say I represent companies. I represent some 2,000 employers in this region. And I would tell you that the employers welcome new, highly trained, well-educated employees that come from anywhere. They don't care where you come from, and I think probably they want diverse workforces. And so if they had a choice of someone choosing between someone that comes from rural Oklahoma versus Chicago or Denver or wherever, I don't think they care. They might give a slight advantage maybe to someone from the state who they think would stay here. They might worry a little bit about someone coming from out of state. But I say there is such an enormous need for talent right now that they welcome anybody and everybody. And the more diverse, the better.
And you might be wondering why, so if that's true, which I agree with, then why does Tulsa Remote only accept people that are moving to Oklahoma from out of the state? And trust me, I would love to pay people to move from Oklahoma City to Tulsa. I would do that every single day of my life. Let's bring them all over here, Mike. Come on. But the reason is, with a lot of the economic development kind of aspect of the program when it was born was additive tax dollars to the state. And so you're bringing in a job that didn't exist before. And so instead of just having an Oklahoman move their tax dollars somewhere else, it's really a net new tax benefit for the state as a whole. And that's kind of at the core of why the program was created to begin with.
I can add on to the answer that you all gave. I think from our perspective, we see the population increase here, and all of that is showing new migration from within the state as well. And so what I've seen is our Asian population in the last census, 29% increase. We've seen 132% increase on other race population growing here. I think there's some synergy happening, and there's some connective tissue tied to that. I think the opportunity is to make sure that we are evaluating how to make everyone's lifestyle happy and thriving here. And I think that's what you're seeing is the synergy between, and I'll call it holistic economic development, because you're connecting the dots between people's lives, workforce, talent, business, and then also the authority to do work in our space, which is trying to make sure that we're socializing equity as well. So anywhere there's people, there's power, right?
So I got to vote for Vision 2025 as my first time I voted as an adult.
Nice.
And I remember thinking that it didn't pass the first time, and I had to maybe go back on the ballot. I can't remember the details of that, but I'm also a 3-time boomeranger, so I've left Tulsa and come back 3 times.
When are you going to be convinced?
I know, right? Yeah. I've been back for 8 years, right? So
Please stay.
Yeah.
Don't leave again. Stay.
So I think of what kept bringing me back, and why I've been back 8 years, is watching something I voted for really have an impact on where we are today. So what's something you would share with everyone around when it's our opportunity to vote for things like bonds and tax money and things that go into the city? What things should we consider or think about when we're making those decisions?
Can I jump in? I'm a moderator, but I'm also very involved in the political landscape of our community. I think that I want to take that question a step backwards and say, don't wait to get involved until the ballot initiative is on the paper. Because oftentimes our community is extremely good about opening up conversations very early in development of these packages. So you can actually make an impact on what ends up in those packages, but we see the same people showing up to those conversations. So as new Tulsans, I go back to kind of that conversation Greg started today, is those packages are often the ones that are creating the incentives that lead to water in the river, or they lead to the arena district, or to the ballpark, which is also done through a ballot initiative. So we really, these are the game-changing projects, right? These are the BOK centers of our community. So if you like these amenities, they are done through work on the ballot. And it takes years. Mike knows. Mike can speak to the processes that go into building those vision packages. And I'm a public outreach expert. So I'm oftentimes facilitating these public engagement sessions, and no one shows up. So we get to a point where there is a ballot out there and no one's excited about it. I'm like, well, where were you whenever we were doing the 15 community listening sessions about this? So I challenge everyone to say, yes, getting to the ballot and voting is important. It's essential. It is the thing I am most passionate about. But I am just as passionate about becoming engaged in the processes that lead us to that point, and being vocal about what you want to see. Because Tulsa is very complacent sometimes. And we need people who have been elsewhere, who have seen what the world can look like when we have public investment in streets and parks and third places and spaces outside in the world. We need those voices advocating for those things. So that's just my personal plug on being an engaged citizen in our community, because what you'll realize is your voice is amplified times 10 in a community our size. So you may think you're one person, but you'll have a lot of people show up behind you that are also like, yeah, I also want that park in my neighborhood. And we really are we're just at the cusp as a city with the new city, the Department of City Experience, of like really understanding that matters to people, and especially for remote workers. So I'm sorry to take that on, but I'm really passionate about it.
I would just simply add, amen, Sister Shagah. I think you absolutely nailed it. One of the things that I would say to all of you who are Tulsa remoters, who are coming here, who've come here within the last few months, the last year or two, Tulsa is the right size city. And I think you probably already figured this out, but it's the right size city that you can get engaged. Mm-hmm. And you can get engaged today, you can get engaged tomorrow, you can get engaged next month. And that engagement, as Shagah referenced, in my mind, will be a game changer. Will be a game changer for you and your family. It'll be a game changer for this community. We had a chamber board chairman come here from Wichita, Kansas, of all places. 3 years later, he was chairman of our board. Many people say, well, I thought you had to live here for your whole life before you could ever be chairman of the chamber. Well, this guy came 3 years later, became chairman. And so we had a lot of people like that do that. And so one thing I think else I'd say about Tulsans is that they welcome new ideas. They welcome diversity. They welcome new thoughts, ideas, suggestions, to Shagah's point about having seen something somewhere else. That's why we take 100, 125 people from Tulsa every year to a different city, normally one much bigger than us, to go learn from them, to go learn best practices as to things that work well, things that work okay, and things that have failed miserably. We don't want to go replicate something, somebody screwed up something, we don't want to do it over. We want to learn from it. And so, but we always are trying to learn and always welcome new ideas here. And so I think you have a golden opportunity to become engaged today, next week, and if you need help, call any of us. We'll gladly help you get engaged.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and for me, like Stacy, your question, it's hard to answer without putting like political values or beliefs on it. So I'm going to do this with trepidation, but give me some grace. So I think the most important thing, especially right now, like today, as we look ahead to next month, is just vote. I think it's often easy as an Oklahoman to become in this frame of mind that like my vote doesn't matter when you're watching election night and there's zero precinct reporting and they've already named the state a certain way. I'm like, hold up, wait, what? We haven't even looked at the votes yet, and we're already saying that? And so I think it's easy to become like numb to that, or just say like, okay, this actually doesn't matter. Like, why am I going to go waste my time? And I would just encourage folks, especially new folks that are coming in and figuring out ways to like make your voice heard. That is the beauty of our country, and that is the beauty of this place. Is like you have the freedom to show up and do and like make your voice heard, regardless of what the data or predictions are going to say. So especially right now, I just say show up and vote. The last, a couple months ago with the mayoral election, I felt like that was a good call for us to like kick ourselves in the pants a bit, and I hope that it's much different in November. But I think first and foremost, just get out there and make your voice heard, regardless of who you are or where you're coming from.
Hold on, you said
jump in just
the mayor's race.
yeah.
You had a guy who came to Tulsa a year and a half or 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Via the Tulsa remote program. I think from Virginia,
Ran for
who
mayor.
no one had ever heard of, no one had ever seen. Nobody knew anybody that knew this person. They ran for mayor, and they were about.
It got close.
Away. They got about a third of the vote.
Yeah.
As much as the people that lived here forever.
That's
just an indication.
I was going to jump in and say that, but I'll also include, I grew up in Washington, D.C. I lived in Nebraska, in Florida, and Seattle, and I don't think you could do that in those places, number one.
Yep.
Number two, I really think this is an opportunity to realize like your connection to history too. So get involved, vote, but also realize being a part of the process is important as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my last, okay, I know I'm on time. My last soapbox will just be that we are not a one party state. We're a disengaged state. So 49% of our state doesn't vote. Of the population that is registered to vote, only 30% show up to vote that day. So if you think your vote doesn't matter, it's actually not true. Your vote is just, you're not showing up to vote. So we are disengaged. The more people who show up, we may be able to change the way the votes turn out and have a voice. So I encourage you all to vote. In the last couple of minutes, quick fire round. Where is the city going in the next 5 to 10 years? Couple words from each of you.
Very increased population, diversity, activity. You've seen the increase in investment downtown. So really quickly, I'll say that it's thriving and it will be a mainstay for quite a while.
Awesome.
Yeah, continued momentum, superb new jobs, high quality jobs from the small, medium, and large markets, and I think further diversification of our economy and continued strong public investments.
Yep.
Wonderful.
The secret's out. People are waking up, seeing the beauty of this place. I think it's we will continue to attract folks here, but I think this next phase really becomes about how you maximize the folks that are choosing to call this place home, while also giving opportunity and increasing social capital and networking to those that are here as well. And I think that's where we really start to make even more strides as a city.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much for your time. Thank you for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks.